Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're stepping way beyond traditional book cataloging and venturing into the wild, sometimes chaotic world of non-book materials, or NBMs. We're going to see exactly how we bring structural order to this vast landscape using the AACR2 rules. So let's just dive right into this massive challenge. For centuries, right, organizing knowledge basically just meant organizing books. Simple. But what happens when human knowledge completely outgrows the printed page? I mean, how do you catalog a celestial globe, a reel of microfiche, or a sound cassette? It requires an absolute paradigm shift in how we think about information retrieval. To tackle this, we're structuring our expedition today into 5 parts: beyond the printed page, power and pitfalls, the cataloger's dilemma, rules of the game, and finally, cataloging in practice. All right, part 1, beyond the printed page. Let's look at the evolution of information storage. You know, information certainly didn't start with the paper book, and it absolutely didn't end there. We moved from stone and clay back in the ancient era to Gutenberg's printing press. But 1953, that kicked off a huge shift with the invention of microphotography. And by the time the late 1960s rolled around, libraries were actively scooping up audiovisual materials because of their massive educational potential. So what actually qualifies as a non-book material? Well, Harold's Librarian's Glossary points to things like audiovisuals, microforms, and computer software. The big takeaway here is that NBMs are essentially any resource that contributes to learning, but just isn't your traditional printed book. They're unique, and they require special handling and, crucially, special cataloging. Which brings us to part 2, power and pitfalls, the utilities and constraints of NBMs. Now, you might be wondering, why even venture into this complex wilderness instead of just sticking to paper? Well, honestly, because books are massive space eaters. Think about it. Entire sets of encyclopedias take up literal walls of shelving. In contrast, NVMs are the ultimate space savers. An entire encyclopedia fitting on one single CD-ROM, that offers huge storage capacity at just a tiny fraction of the physical footprint. And then there's the educational payoff, which is just immense. Media resources are incredibly powerful for communicating complex topics. Check this out. Users retain just about 10% of information from reading text alone. But that jumps to 30% when viewing and shoots up to a massive 50% when it's an interactive audiovisual experience, where they're hearing, seeing, and discussing. That is a real game changer. But of course, exploring this terrain comes with some serious hazards. It's not like a paperback. You can't just open a microfiche on the bus. You need specialized, often very expensive machinery just to access the data. Plus, staring at screens or microforms can cause physical eye strain. And because these materials are usually super fragile or rare, they typically can't be issued for home use. Oh, and unlike a paper document where you might just pencil in a quick note, information on a microform cannot be easily updated. So that leads us right into part 3, the cataloger's dilemma, the shared problems of cataloging the unknown. Catalogers face a totally unique dilemma with NBMs. Why? Because the comforting standard title page of a printed book simply doesn't exist on a tape reel or an art reproduction. So how do you find the author equivalent? What happens if the information on the container actually contradicts what's on the tape label? And really, how do you physically describe something you literally need a machine to even look at? Luckily, there's a survival guide. Part 4, Rules of the Game, the AACR2 Rulebook. ACR2 gives us 3 ascending levels of bibliographic description, because obviously you don't treat a generic roadmap the same way you treat a priceless historical manuscript. The first level is just a minimum description for minor items in a small library. The second level, that's your standard description you'll find for most typical library materials. And the third level, that's a full, rigorous description reserved exclusively for rare or highly important items, usually found in big research collections. And because we don't have those standard title pages, AACR2 establishes a really strict hierarchy for where to look for data. This is known as the chief source of information. For a map or a globe, the chief source is the item itself. For a sound disk, it's the disk label, and you'd prefer that over the sleeve or container. For a computer file, it's the internal user label. This is absolutely the first place a cataloger must look to extract accurate data to make sure everything stays perfectly consistent. Another massive tool in our AACR2 survival kit is the GMD, or general material designation. Now, while technically it's an optional addition, it is highly essential for non-book materials. It basically acts as a quick warning label. It sits right next to the title and tells the library user exactly what kind of physical format they're about to request, so that they don't go asking for a book and end up with a huge reel of film. So in the catalog, you're going to see terms like map, microform, or realia, which, by the way, just means three-dimensional artifacts like a diorama or a board game. And these terms are enclosed in square brackets right after the title proper. This single bracketed word is a lifesaver. It instantly brings order to the chaos and sets expectations before the user even glances at the physical description. Okay, let's put this into action. Part 5, Cataloging in Practice. Applying the rules in the real world. Imagine you're a cataloger. Someone hands you a fragile 10-page handwritten poem from 1946. It's written in Hindi, titled Hamari Deshbashiyan by Ravindra Shastri. And oh, 2 of the leaves are completely damaged by water stains. How exactly do you map this unique, one-of-a-kind item into a standardized library system? Well, here is the beautiful result of our rules applied at the second level of description. Just look at the title line, Hamara Deshbashiyan, immediately followed by our GMD, the word manuscript, right there in brackets. Then, right below that, we note the physical extent, 10 leaves, 24 centimeters. And down in the note section at the bottom, those physical defects, like 2 leaves are stained by water, are clearly documented, alongside the fact that it is a holograph, meaning it's actually in the author's own handwriting. Now, you might have noticed the punctuation here, and I promise you, it is not random. AACR2 uses prescribed punctuation marks as this sort of universal code for both humans and machines. Square brackets are used to hide outside knowledge or enclose that GMD. Parentheses are there to contain physical dimensions or record counts. And the plus sign? That announces bonus materials, like, say, a musical score comes with a bonus audio tape. It's an entire language. And when we apply these rules to a cartographic item, like this tourist map of West Bengal, we use mathematical ratios for the scale, so 1 to 250,000. We detail the exact number of maps and the physical dimensions, both open and folded. For example, 20 by 12 inches folded to 25 by 12 centimeters. This guarantees the user knows exactly what they are unfolding and gives the cataloger a perfect mathematical representation of the physical object. So as we leave this information wilderness, having seen how we tamed everything from handwritten manuscripts to sound cassettes, I really want to leave you with this thought. Our formats keep compressing, they keep evolving. When our knowledge inevitably shifts completely to electronic resources, virtual reality holograms, or, maybe even direct neural data, how will the catalogers of the future adapt the rules of the game? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and